The Bucs lose another game in heartbreaking fashion, but more importantly, they lose more key players to injury. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this live post-game reaction episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as editor-in-chief of the 813.tv. Here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, all one word, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. My biggest takeaways and forecasting the Bucs for the rest of the season, that is coming up in a little bit, but let's start with the biggest moment. Now, the biggest moment in this one, obviously, was losing Tristan Wirfs. That knee injury, which has been reported to be an MCL sprain, was huge in the first half. But as far as the biggest moment from a play standpoint was not being able to score from inside the 10-yard line late in the game. 2 runs by Rachaad White for a net gain of 0, then an incomplete pass to Rakim Jarrett on third down, and the Bucs have to settle for a game-tying field goal. You had to have a touchdown there, and that's exactly why. Zion is out with injury. Braswell is out with injury. Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan, with 40 seconds left, can do serious damage, and that's exactly what they did. Look, unlike last week, and I've seen some people talking about this, I am not advocating for the Bucs to have gone for it on 4th down. Kicking was the right decision in that situation. It just never should have come down to that. A lot of people are upset that Rachaad White was in the game instead of Bucky Irving, and I understand the frustration. I also understand that if you're running a one-back set, Rachaad has to be the one on the field in that moment. He is the better pass blocker, and the 49ers were bringing the house just about every play. With Bucky on the field, they are either going to get him in the backfield like they did to Rachaad on 2nd down, or he's not going to be able to pick up the blitz, which would have caused Baker to get ambushed. Now you're looking at a sack, a potential fumble. Bad things would have happened. The best course of action, in my opinion, would have been to put both running backs on the field in the goal-to-go situations. 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down, have both of them out there. Now, you could also argue, and I mentioned it in the chat, Bantry had brought it up, I also might have gone with Sean Tucker in that situation. The Bucs were having a lot of success running the football, and you were doing it with the more elusive and the more quick guys like Rachaad and Bucky. Sending out a bruiser like Sean Tucker, at least on 1st down, maybe even on 2nd down, and really forcing the 49ers to have to gang tackle a bigger, more powerful back might have played into the Bucs' favor. At least maybe you're getting inside the 5, and now all of a sudden you can run a quarterback draw. You can do a quick out to Cade Otton. You can do some different things. Instead, a gain of 3 yards, a loss of 3 yards, then having to throw the ball to Rakim Jarrett, it led to a Buccaneers field goal. And having Bucky and Rachaad on the field together, you could also say, well, that means the Bucs have to take one of those receivers off the field. Well, you know what? So what? Up to that point, the receivers had done absolutely nothing all game long. So who cares if you're losing a guy that has brought nothing to the offense all day long in exchange for one of the 2 guys that got the vast majority of the production? Sterling Shepard 1 catch on 3 targets for 7 yards. Rakim Jarrett, 2 catches on 4 targets for 10 yards. Ryan Miller, 1 catch on 3 targets for 11 yards. Palmer, no catches on 1 target, no yards. McMillan, didn't see him. He didn't exist. With 3 shots inside the 10-yard line, there are only 3 people that should have even sniffed that football. Rashad, Bucky, Cade Otton. Otton finished with 5 catches on 8 targets, but only 2 targets in the second half. One was on the very first drive, one was on the very last drive. That's not enough. I know he had to help Justin School against Nick Bosa, but you mean to tell me that you can't have Durham or Kieft lining up over on the left side to help block so that your best pass catcher can go out there and run routes and try to help the offense? Much like playing for overtime last week cost the Bucs, having to rely on a tie cost the Bucs this week. The offense was not good. Baker only had 116 passing yards. They were 5 of 14 on third down. They were essentially bailed out by penalties, legit penalties. I'll give the officiating that, and missed field goals. So the game honestly never really should have been as close as it was, but it was that close. And the Bucs once again missed a golden opportunity to steal a win. It's hard to get too mad at the defense in this one. They got stops, they bent, they didn't break very often. Costly penalties led to points instead of getting off the field on third down. Moody missing kicks was huge, but the defense gave up 413 yards, 338 of them in the air. They were 6 of 11 on third down getting stops, and they got stops throughout the game at key moments up until when it mattered most. And honestly, that's kind of the theme of how this season has gone, isn't it? Baker didn't look good. He was missing open receivers. He had a fumble late that could have cost them. There were a lot of self-inflicted wounds. You had a bad snap by Graham Barton on second down that pushed the Buccaneers back. You had a bad trick play called at a terrible time. The Bucs had gone up 17-13, and the offense proceeded to go 3 and out on their next 2 drives. The first time, it was while they were up 17-13. They could have taken advantage of another missed field goal, added to the lead. Maybe you only get a field goal, but now all of a sudden you're kicking to win the game at the end, not tie the game. The other time they go 3 and out, they were down 20-17. So they just couldn't get things going outside of a solid 10-play touchdown drive in the second half and then being bailed out by the Niners making terrible mistakes on the defensive side of the ball and getting flagged for some costly penalties. Their first touchdown of the game, that nice dump off to Rachaad White to set up that middle screen, that was set up by a muffed punt. Up until then, the Bucs offense had nothing going for them. And that muffed punt kind of got things rolling a little bit. Then all of a sudden they string together a huge drive where it was outside of a first down 7-yard pass to Sterling Shepard. It was all Bucky and Rashad the rest of that drive. And that was the only thing the Bucs could do offensively. It's a shame that they got away from it. It's a shame that they couldn't punch it in from the goal line, but it's these costly mistakes. It's these self-inflicted wounds. It's these missed opportunities that have cost the Buccaneers potential wins against the Niners, against the Chiefs in the last couple of weeks. This is a team without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin. This week, they didn't have Tyke Smith out there on the field. They lose Tristan Wirfs. They lose Zion McCollum. They lose Chris Braswell, and they're still in the thick of it at the very end. Hopefully the bye week brings, some guys getting healthy, some guys starting to return, but it was just rough. All right, going to jump into the chat real quick. We got Sal 319 says they refuse to play Tucker, and I'm sick of it. I'm pretty frustrated with it as well, but Bucky and Rashad both had incredible games. They really did. They were the only reason that the Bucs offense was able to climb their way back into it. Destined for Greatness says, I understand the Bucs offense struggled today, but can we really blame them? You have backups at most positions and practice squad players. I think it's only fair to point the finger at the offense when the offense is struggling, and the defense had held the 49ers to 20 points up until the very last 40 seconds of the game. This was an offense that is scoring at an all-time clip. Even with the bad performance this week, they were scoring at an all-time clip for, a team that only had one win. So when you have an offense that's averaging 35 points a game and you finally get a defensive performance that holds the opposing team to 20, even 23 there at the very end, if we're going to blame the defense when they screw up and they allow 30, 34, 37 points, it's only right to point the finger to the offense when they had, barely over 200 total yards and, couldn't get things going and only scored 20 points. Fair is fair. I understand that they have, injury issues, but so does the defense. And we're not shy about blaming them at all when they screw up. My biggest takeaways on both sides of the ball, that is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing overtime, which is why they've created the Stay in the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like you. The fans who are first in the parking lot and the last to leave, we see you. You know what else gives me a bit of fan fuel this week? Knowing that the Buccaneers are heading into a bye week and hopefully getting healthy down the stretch. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stay in the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, and it's the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players leaves in the first half and doesn't return. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, all one word, to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's now 2 shows every day. You have the Madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then swing by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Going to jump into the chat again real quick. We got Richard. He says, I disagree. The defense didn't hold San Francisco's offense. They held themselves with the mistakes. Brock still threw for 340 yards. That's a fair criticism. I don't totally disagree with you. At the same time, even if, the Niners aren't making mistakes, even if Moody isn't, missing field goals, you had a situation where the Bucs defense, given what they have on the field, given what they've shown the last couple of weeks, they would bend but not break. The 2 touchdowns came thanks to self-inflicted wounds. You had a pass rush that couldn't get to Purdy. He had all day for those receivers to run around in the end zone until he finally found George Kittle. You had a touchdown drive where the Bucs should have gotten off the field on third down. They had a third down stop, but you had Josh Hayes called for, was it illegal contact or defensive holding? Some bailed him out on 3rd and 7 with a 5-yard penalty. Then you have J.J. Russell getting turned around in the middle of the field. Ricky Pearsall's wide open. He takes it to the house. So the defense, by and large, I still think did a good job of bending, not breaking. And again, this was a Buccaneers offense that had 3 points in the first half. Even without Mike, even without Chris, they were still scoring a lot of points. They were still putting drives together. The defense did as well as you could have asked them to do, given the circumstances. I think the blame is more on the offensive side of the ball. But my biggest takeaways here on offense, Jalen McMillan is not the guy we thought he was. McMillan was non-existent in this game. I need to see the snap counts. I did not see him on the field. He was active. He was ready to go. Everyone said that he was fine, and then he wasn't there. I'm legitimately not sure if he was on the field for any snaps at all. Didn't see Marquez Callaway either, but that's kind of whatever. McMillan on the season has 10 receptions on 22 targets for 109 yards and a touchdown. 53 of those 109 yards came on 2 receptions in the first 2 weeks of the season. His touchdown came in week 1 against the Commanders. With Godwin and Evans out, McMillan should have been feasting. Instead, he's just a guy. That's it. He's just a guy. He's nothing special. He's nothing noteworthy. He's Tyler Johnson. He's not even Brashad Perryman. Perryman at least had explosive games, or he had big-time plays, big-time third down conversions, game-winning touchdowns. Where is the guy that was hyped up all offseason and throughout the preseason? Where is the guy that was making incredible catches in training camp against some of the best defenders that the Bucs have to offer? Where is the guy that Jason Light was talking about as being a steal in the draft because he never should have fallen to the 3rd round to begin with? I have yet to see him. You have yet to see him. The Bucs have yet to see him. This was the player that was supposed to take some of the pressure off of Evans and Godwin. He was supposed to be the potential replacement for Godwin if the Bucs couldn't re-sign him after this season. Where is that guy that was supposed to give the Bucs a legitimate wide receiver 3 for the first time since Antonio Brown ran off of a field half naked in New Jersey? I'm not sure what the Bucs are going to do. I'm not sure what they can do about it, what they can do about him. But if McMillan doesn't reassess during the bye week and start to make some noise in the second half of the season, the Bucs are once again right back in the wide receiver market this offseason. It makes re-signing Chris Godwin that much more critical because you do not have a guy that has stepped up and been able to take on any workload whatsoever. He has not been able to make an impact. He's essentially had one game where he had a couple of key plays, and that was it. He has missed time with injury. He has missed time from just not showing up on the field. I'm at a loss. I truly am, because I loved what I saw from Jalen McMillan throughout this process, throughout training camp, throughout preseason, watching him even on plays when he wasn't the target, being able to suck away defenders and create opportunities for other players. That guy's non-existent. Hopefully he gets his act together coming off of the bye week and gets more opportunity. But right now I have no confidence in him being anything more than just a guy the rest of the year. Rakim Jarrett has been more impactful. Sterling Shepard has been more impactful. Ryan Miller has been more impactful. That's not what you want to say about your 3rd round wide receiver that had a lot of hope, a lot of hype coming into the season. My takeaway for the defensive side of the ball is, and maybe Richard, you might agree with this. Get used to it. Nothing's going to change. The Bucs defense is what it is. They aren't going to get key stops in big situations. They aren't going to rack up a bunch of sacks. And Richard, I see you in the chat saying JTS had a sack. Yeah, he is officially free of criticism from me for the week. He gets a week, but coming out of the bye, heading into the Giants game, I'm allowed to criticize him again. But the Bucs defense, they're not going to rack up a bunch of sacks. They're not going to manufacture takeaways. The defense is what it is, and that's a bad defense. Losing Zion McCollum makes them even worse than they were before. Zion didn't have a great game by any means. He had a really, really weak pass interference call against him, but he was by far and away their best corner. He'd been one of the best corners in the NFL coming into this week. Coming into this game, Zion McCollum was still Pro Football Focus's number 1 graded corner in the league. Josh Hayes played better than he has the last couple of weeks, but he still got beat, still made dumb mistakes that cost the defense, had a couple of really great pass breakups. Credit where credit is due. Josh Hayes started off the game pretty rough. He really started to play a lot better from the second quarter on. Great pass breakup on Ricky Pearsall that prevented a first down. A great pass breakup on Jawan Jennings in the end zone. Had great coverage on another play in the end zone. I think he was defending against Pearsall in that one too. So he did start to play better throughout the game. Hopefully that's a sign of good things to come. But, he's still not great. Tyreek Funderburk, he's not ready to be out there playing the role that he's being asked to play, but the Bucs don't have any choice. They don't have anybody left. KJ Britt isn't good, but neither is JJ Russell. The edge rushers can't get to the quarterbacks. Even when the Bucs were getting pressure on Sunday, they weren't bringing Purdy down, and it led to big plays. That's just who they are this year. Jordan Whitehead and Yaya Diaby have not lived up to the offseason hype and excitement. Antoine Winfield Jr. isn't having anywhere close to the kind of season that he had last year, and he's not coming anywhere close to the amount of splash plays that he had last year. Levante is always going to be Levante. Vita is always going to be Vita. But that's not enough. The scheme is bad. The play is bad. The players are not good. They're not good enough to win like this. I don't know if the scheme is the problem. I don't know if the players are the problem. I don't know if it's a combination of both, but the defense cannot get stops when it matters the most. Kalijah Cansey was beside himself in the locker room after the game, frustrated to be in that situation yet again and not come through. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They can't cover the middle of the field. They can't tackle the ball carrier with the first guy. They're just bad. There's no end in sight. So don't expect any miracles or drastic changes coming out of the bye week. The only saving grace is the terrible offenses that the Buccaneers get to face on the other side of this bye and the terrible defenses that the Bucs offense should be able to score in droves against. That's really all you got. That's how you're going to string together 3 or 4 wins in a row. That's how you have the potential to win 6 out of the last 7 and get yourself to 10 wins and be in the thick of the wild card race. Because this defense is not going to change. Jamel Dean wasn't playing great before he got hurt and went on to injured reserve. I don't expect him to be great when he comes back. Zion McCollum, you hope that the bye week is the amount of time that he needs to get back on the field. Tyke Smith, same thing. But KJ Britt and JJ Russell are not going to get the job done at off-ball linebacker. Yaya Diaby is not going to all of a sudden turn into an alpha. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka's 1 sack, against Brock Purdy is not going to propel him into averaging a sack a game the rest of the season. It's just what it is. And as I mentioned on this show before, at some point, someone's going to have to pay for this, and it's probably going to end up being Todd Bowles when the season is over. But I give my midseason assessment next on this episode of Locked On Bucs. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The Buccaneers are losing more and more ground. No game this week, but they are now plus 13,000 to win the Super Bowl, trailing the Chicago Bears and just ahead of the New Orleans Saints. The Chiefs remain the Super Bowl favorite at plus 420, followed by the Lions at plus 480, the Ravens at plus 600, and the Bills at plus 800. Visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Wrapping things up here on a post-game live reaction episode of Locked On Bucs. So what is the outlook for the Buccaneers heading into the bye at 4-6 with 7 games remaining? First and foremost, if Tristan misses significant time, they're done. They're not making the playoffs. We have seen the Justin School experiment once this season, and it was an unmitigated disaster. I know they face a bunch of bad teams and should win those games, but for as bad as Dallas is, for as bad as Las Vegas is, you really want School protecting Baker's blind side against those teams' pass rushes? You really want School to have to go one-on-one with Max Crosby? That's not a recipe for success. Do you really trust him to get that job done if Tristan is out for an extended period of time? I don't. I honestly don't think the Bucs do. If Zion McCollum misses extended time, a bad defense gets even worse. Jamel Dean was not playing well when he was on the field before now, and now he has to go back to the #1 corner. That is a disaster waiting to happen. No receiving threat has emerged with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out. So when Evans returns, it's nothing but double and triple teams to force the ball into the hands of who exactly? Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, Rakim Jarrett, all guys that have not taken advantage of the situation and have done very little to help this offense. So then it's still Cade, Bucky, and Rashad or bust. Evans would also need 95 yards a game to not lose his 1,000-yard streak, which is going to be an insanely tough task with no one else stepping up to help and take a little bit of the pressure off of Evans and allow him for some one-on-one opportunities, which more often than not, he's going to win. Look, I stand by what I said. The Bucs can make the playoffs with this schedule, even at 4-6. But my prediction was not expecting the best offensive lineman on this team and arguably the best left tackle in the league to get his knee bent sideways and at the very least sprain his MCL. The run game was clicking with the entire starting offensive line on the field. The pass protection was better with the entire starting offensive line on the field. And now it's yet another problem that the Buccaneers have to figure out how to overcome. And quite frankly, there's just too many of those anymore. There's too many problems, too many shortcomings that the Bucs have to find ways to overcome. The season isn't over, but at this point, I'm not sure missing the playoffs is the worst thing in the world. The Bucs are currently slotted at the 14th pick in the draft with the afternoon games not complete as of this moment. So you have better draft capital to add to a team that's loaded when healthy. You can get an elite corner or a top edge rusher or probably the best off-ball linebacker available in the draft sitting at a spot like that. I am never one to advocate for tanking, and the Bucs team that we have right now is not one that's going to lay down the rest of the season. They are not going to accept defeat at any moment in time. They are still fighting for a wild card spot, and they want to get into the playoffs. All you have to do is get in, and then anything can happen, right? You just need a ticket to the dance, then anything can happen. But if we're being honest with ourselves, the Buccaneers are not going to go on the road and upset San Fran or Philly or Washington or Atlanta. They are not built for that now. Their defense is not good enough to do it with the way they are constructed and the way that they operate. They just aren't. Now, you can save this and you can throw it back in my face if the defense does a 180. But I'm not sure anyone in the chat, listening later, watching later, I'm not sure any of you have the confidence in this team to make any real noise in the postseason, especially when you don't have Chris Godwin, you don't have an alpha edge rusher, you don't have a defense that you can rely on to get a key stop or a takeaway in a crucial moment. Like David used to say on this show all the time, there are playoff teams and there are teams that make the playoffs. The 2024 Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now the latter. If they get a wild card spot, they are just a team that made the playoffs, not a playoff caliber team. As of right now, the Buccaneers are 12th in the NFC and 2.5 games behind the Packers for the final wild card spot. They have the head-to-head over both the Commanders and the Eagles. So whichever of those teams don't win the division, the Bucs could potentially jump in a tiebreaker situation, but they still need a lot of help. Washington is 7-3. Philly is now 7-2 as that game is ending during this show. The Vikings are 7-2. The Packers are 6-3. San Fran is now 5-4 with the tiebreaker over the Bucs if it came down to that. The Rams are in the thick of the NFC West hunt at 4-4. The Bears and Seahawks both ahead of the Bucs, both sitting at 4-5. That's a really tough path to the playoffs for the Buccaneers. Their next two opponents are both 2-win teams, but the Bucs have to rattle off 6 wins in their final 7 games to give them a chance, along with help from the rest of the league beating teams ahead of them. It's not over. And in my heart of hearts, I still believe that a 10-win Buccaneers team makes the playoffs. But again, you have to ask yourself, what's better for the long term? Is it a healthy Bucs roster that could be in conversation as the best team in the NFC South as long as these holes are addressed? And you have to sit back and say the best way to address off-ball linebacker, corner, edge rusher is the draft. Your free agent money has to go to Chris Godwin. It has to. If you are the final wild card team in the playoffs and you lose in the first round, the best draft spot you can have is 19th. So what's better, 14th or 19th? And I hate to have this conversation, but the Bucs have faced by far the strongest strength of schedule in the NFL through the first 10 weeks. Their opposing team's win percentage is .649. The next closest is the Cardinals at .608. The Bucs' remaining opponents' win percentage is .323. They can get the job done on their end. But this is a bad situation that they put themselves in now, where they have very little control over their own destiny. So for the final time, I will ask all of you in the chat, I will ask all of you listening at home, what is better for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers franchise long term? Is it making the playoffs this year by squeaking into the wild card and having to go on the road to play against a team like the Commanders, like the Eagles, maybe the Falcons, maybe the Vikings? Or is it being able to add better draft prospects to a roster that when healthy, was going to be one of the better playoff teams in the NFC. I'm not advocating for the Bucs to lose out. I'm not advocating for them to tank. But I think if you look at the way this team is constructed, with the way Todd Bowles is running the defense, with the holes that they have that are glaring week in and week out, the Bucs might just be better off if they don't make the playoffs and they get that better draft capital. And all of a sudden, 2025, 2026, 2027, those are the teams that are going to be in the thick of the championship hunt in the NFC. Going to jump into the chat one more time before I get out of here. Richard in the chat says 5 interceptions as a team is terrible. Feels like 2022 when they had 10 team interceptions this year. Yeah, in fact, Ben, who is usually in the chat for these post games, he tweeted out, he says, when's the last time the Bucs had an interception? It feels like forever. And the first one that I remembered was Levante David on Thursday night against the Falcons. Turns out they had 2 interceptions the week after. Both Zion and Tyke Smith had interceptions against New Orleans. But, I mean, that's been a month ago. The Bucs don't have an interception in a month. And this defense, a Todd Bowles defense, is at its best when they're getting after the quarterback and they're getting takeaways. Neither of those things is happening for the Bucs this year. We got Michael in the chat that says, just win, baby. I mean, hopefully they do. And then we got Leda Wood 6. Bowles must go. Training staff needs to be reevaluated, and White should only be in on 3rd and 8 or greater. Bowles, and I'll say it again, Bowles is not going anywhere in the season. I think his seat is red hot now for after the season, but he's not going to get fired in season. That's not how the Glazer family and the Buccaneers do business. The training staff, I mean, everybody should be reevaluated after the season. And then I'm going to disagree with you on Rachaad White only being on the field on 3rd down or more. He is still the best pass blocker on the out of the running backs. He still had some incredible plays, had a key catch on that 4th down when Baker Mayfield stiff-armed Nick Bosa for 1.5 miles. He still brings a lot of juice to this offense. Bucky was the more effective runner in this one, but Rachaad's contributions to the offense was a big reason that the Bucs offense was able to get points. That is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs, because I am so far beyond over on time that I'm going to get in all kinds of trouble. But you know what? You guys are worth it. That's just how it is. Please check out everything going on over at the 813.tv. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. And make sure you're subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on and wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.